talking about
yeah.
voter suppression.
So
Uh,
I'm glad you bring up that context. So like obviously this isn't just Michigan. I think we've talked a little bit on the show before. Like the big response from the Republican Party is to previous election is try to disenfranchise as many people as possible and restrict the franchise so that something like 2020 doesn't play out again.
let me
Uh,
give you some fun facts. Let me give you some fun facts. Fun facts. So this is coming. This is this. I got this from multiple sources, but one of the sources I got this from was from Democracy Now. Since 2020 election, state lawmakers have introduced 250 anti anti-voting or voter suppression laws in over 43 states since the election. So all that work that Stacey Abrams and other activists have been doing about getting more people to register and vote, how Washington uh, uh, recently passed a bill that will restore voting rights to people who are on parole or probation. All of that wonderful legislation, like what happened in Florida, getting people who were formerly incarcerated their rights to vote again. All that wonderful stuff, all those wonderful efforts. The GOP, after they lost 2020, said, nah, we're not having it on a state level. They said, we're not having it. Um,
Get that
it
genie
is
back in
back
the
to
bottle. Yeah.
it is back to the Jim Crow era, voter suppression. Here we go. Bigger nine. That's what they're doing.
Oh yeah. And worth I think it's worth mentioning, in the Michigan context, like just as recently as 2018, we had some really comprehensive voting rights reforms passed through, like I believe it was Prop One, did some really great things like no reason absentee voting. We had voters not politicians successfully passed their anti-gerrymandering bill. And keep in mind, like there were pluralities of Democrat, Independent, and Republican vote. These were very popular initiatives. So, I mean, it's worth pointing out that like this push from the Republican Party is does not track with the actual kind of demands of their own base. However, it is based a lot on the big lie, which if you're following national news, you notice some of the perpetrators of the big lie are now stepping up as legal defense to say you shouldn't have believed the stuff I said because it was so outlandish. But so they created this story from whole cloth that there was something dubious about the 2020 election, and somehow that absentee voting leads to fraud, which really it doesn't. Actually leaves kind of a more concise paper trail. But what they're basically doing is like now they're saying like, oh, our basis told me they're concerned about this thing that we completely created from whole cloth and created a bunch of fake outrage about. So like we lied to our own base, and now the base is telling us to do something about it. And so now here are these changes that a lot of them, if you read through all 39, many of them are unnecessary. A lot of them are meant to just clog up the works. There are a couple of like on the face, like kind of positive ones, like something like makes it easier for people who are 16 to register to vote. But at the most part, these are all just like really, really bad, very much in line with what we're seeing across the country. I wanted to point out to some of the more egregious ones. One, they require drop boxes for absentee ballots to be approved by the Secretary of State, which that is typically handled by local municipalities and their city clerks. You're clogging up the works and you're making it more difficult for those absentee drop boxes to be set up. There's tons in here about making sure that there's like equal representation of observers, political parties. There's one particular one that wants to ban like nonpartisan observers, like they have to be registered with one of the two duopolic political parties, which not only does that disenfranchise people with other political parties, like myself, I'm a member of the Socialist Party, but it creates kind of a partisan atmosphere around what should be just like looking out for election integrity. Again, a couple of other things that I really I found disturbing. A point. There's one that statewide election audits, or sorry, they basically. I'm trying to find a. Okay, where is it exactly? But there's one in here that basically requires Michigan to more closely work with other states in a. It's basically empowering cross-check, which we've talked a lot on the show as being like a really strong voter suppression tool. There's stronger requirements for voter ID that are not really all that necessary. Um, Again, higher penalizations for these crimes that are virtually non-existent. Like there was very little voter fraud in 2020. A few of the cases that were pointed out to be voter fraud were either like they said people saying it was a dead person when it was not, or actually a few Trump voters voted multiple times. And
Then yes. Actually, wait. I'm glad you brought that up. There were multiple stories of voter fraud. It was Trump supporters who said the president said that we could do this. That
mhm,
is not a joke. That
yeah.
is not a punchline. That happened in Florida and in Texas. Now, obviously, because it's Florida, I expected it because it's Florida. Florida's crazy,
Mhm.
but but also in Texas and in other states where that is when we talk about voter fraud. Yeah, it usually does happen. It's usually Republicans.
And I will point out this the two worst ones on here that I saw. Prohibiting the Secretary of State from either mailing absentee ballot applications or posting these applications on the website. So you are, it was very convenient in 2020. Everybody got an application in the mail. You just fill it out, zip it in, it mails right back to you. They're trying to, and then another one that says that state funds can't be used for postage. So the idea would be that they would send you an absentee ballot, but you would have to get your own postage stamps and go actually physically go to a post office or a drop box, which again, it, those two things, literally all it does is it makes it more difficult to vote. There is no other justification. Like even you can come up with a fake justification based on some of like the big lie stuff, but those two in particular, like there is no dancing around that. All those do are make it more difficult to vote and make it more of an arduous process for people to try to exercise their rights and exercise the franchise. And
And
again, just as a reminder, I know I'm speaking to the choir for folks on here, but again, all of the accusations about like voter fraud in Detroit and elsewhere in Michigan were thoroughly disproven after the fact.
yeah, I mean, uh this is not a uncommon tactic. Republicans don't want us to vote. They want less people to vote. Like this is not something that's new. Uh, they literally said it in multiple cases. There was a recent Republican politician that said more. I forgot who said it. I'm trying to see if I could find the Republican who said it because it was national news. Um, I don't think it was I don't think it was Dan Crenshaw or somebody else. It was an actual public figure. It was a legislator who said that more people voting disenfranchises Republicans. That is literally what they said, and it shouldn't surprise you. Years ago, I think it was what in 2001. Um, it was at I think a Republican convention or something. One of the heads said that yes, uh, we don't want more people voting. We don't want democracy working as it should. We want less people to vote. Like,
Mhm.
and so it's not surprising that they will go to these tactics. They're not going to change their strategy. They're not going to change their policies. Like the Republican policy uh of uh
I
rugged.
want to do a quick aside, Lawrence. After the 2012 election, this is well known. the Republican Party basically devised this. The Republican Party, to their credit, they are much better at self crits than Democrats in certain ways. And it was a comprehensive document talking about like what they have a couple like two strategies you can follow. One, tweak our policies, maybe do like more of like a kind of libertarian route where we can try to make our policies actually appeal to a broader swath of people, make sure that we kind of rein in over racism, et cetera, et cetera. And then the other was kind of this nativist voter suppression side, which, as we all know, the last 4 years, which route they ended up taking. Um, but yeah, it is very deliberate. And I'll let you go back and finish your thought, Lawrence. I apologize. I wanted to point out that, like, the Republican Party, what they are doing is it's intentional and it's strategic, and it's bad for even the kind of ramshackle democracy that we do have. So,
I mean, but that's the thing. Are Republicans saying are the conservative ideology or the conservative mind or policies? Their policies, they understand that their policies are not popular. You know, the tax cut, the what was it? Donald Trump's tax cut that he passed, one of his biggest pieces of legislation, only had what, 23% approval rating, 20 to 30%. Like, it wasn't a high approval rating because we all knew where that money was going to go. Their policies of deregulation, tax cuts for the rich, um, the authoritarian crackdown on civil liberties, on Americans, right? That's their platform. That's their policies. The American people don't want that. The American people overwhelmingly want universal health care, universal basic income, infrastructure, more money invested in our infrastructure, job security, food security. Like, these are things that that the American people want. Universal free college and tuition. All of the things that I've named have over 60% approval rating in America. When you look at the GOP's platform, none of those things are on there. So what do they have to do? They're not going to change their platform or ideology, but they can gerrymander. They can gerrymander and jerry rig the system. They can do voter suppression tactics. They can stop people from exercising their right to vote and making it harder for Americans' voices to be heard.
mm-hmm.
That's much more feasible, and that is a lot more feasible, and it works in their favor. It's more financially feasible for them to do so.
Yep, that's very true. And I think one last thing for to wrap up. I know we got our guest waiting. One thing I'd like to point out, like right now, there is something going through Congress. The Democratic Party is pushing this bill that would be some of the most comprehensive voting rights reform in at least a generation. Now, that's not. There are some things to criticize about it, but it does, in a lot of ways, create a stopgap at the federal level to prevent some of these voter suppression hijinks we're seeing across these GOP legislatures. But of course, that all depends, as basically everything else, the topics we're talking about, on the capacity of the Democratic Party to actually end the filibuster in order to actually do the things they say they're going to do. My over under on that is there's a lot of centrist corporate Democrats who they prefer to keep the filibuster so that they have a scapegoat to explain why they're not doing all this stuff they said they were going to do. That's a cynical reading, but it's also mostly true. Lawrence, anything else you wanted to add to this talk before we go to a quick break?
Nah.
All right. Okay, y'all are listening to the Hood Rat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. You can also see our show on our Facebook page, and we also have a YouTube channel. We break down our clips or our show into shorter clips. You can watch at your leisure. Keep your dialogues. This is your only source for political revolution.